Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of The Curse of the Collector. Thanks for spending some time with us on your Sunday evening. Again, this is the show where it's all about stuff we accumulate because, the curse, it's
Is
real.
real.
It's real.
It's real.
Really real. Yeah. There's always something to buy, something to acquire, something to search for, something to plan for, and then the expectation that what you get is going to totally enrich our lives. And maybe it does, maybe it doesn't.
For about 10 minutes until I want something else.
Exactly. Yeah.
There you go.
And just as a little precursor, tune in next month where we're going to talk about some things that we've collected that maybe didn't quite fit the bill for us. But that's a story for another tale next month. But for today, we've got some stuff that we picked up that we really want to talk about, as we always do on the show. We're going to go 2 rounds each. So everybody's got 1 or 2 or 3 things they're going to show off. And let me introduce the crew. Davey Gallagher is here all the way from Scotland.
Hail, hail.
From the state of Texas, Mr. Scott Berry.
Howdy.
From Ohio, the man of Mr. Props, and now all of a sudden the guy with the amazing screen he's always got a presentation for us, Mr. Jamie Laszlo.
What's up?
And from Canada, Mr. Rick Labonte. What's up, gentlemen?
Hi. Hi.
What's going on?
Same
Good to
old,
be
same old.
here.
Just trying to figure out what I was going to talk about for this episode was challenging because there was a lot to pick, and I had a couple things I wanted to talk about, but then I was like, well, in the last episode I talked about this artist, so maybe I'll save that for another time. But then I saw some other things sitting around, and I was like, oh, that'll go over well. So with all that being said, Davey's going to kick us off today with his first selection of the day. Mr. Gallagher, turn it over to you.
Just quick, Pete, what order are we going in?
It'll be Davey, Scott, Jamie, Rick, and myself.
And real quick, this is our 1-year anniversary of this show.
Thank you, Jamie. Geez, I totally spazzed on that. We talked about that at length before we started taping, then I forgot. Yes. This is our 1-year anniversary, our 12th episode. So, the little
13.
engine that could made it to 1 year.
Unbelievable. On a show we thought would last 2 episodes. Here we
Yes.
are a year later.
Here we are a year later. So, yes.
Can you believe, Rick, you've been doing this for a year already? Oh, well. Anyway, here's to the next year.
That's right.
So let's kick it off then. So in a couple of weeks, we are getting the final EMI release of the Marillion catalogue with Season's End coming in a box set. That will finish off the EMI run. They've already teased that they're going to continue doing a few things beyond that. But recently, we've had a couple of kind of ancillary Marillion releases. So I'm just going to pick one of each of them because they both came out roughly at the same time. One's about a month and a half old. One came out a couple of weeks ago, and it is the respective releases by the lead singers. So we'll start with Derek himself. This is Vigil's End UK Tour 2021. So his stuff he only releases on his website these days. So you need to go on his site to get his stuff, but it is always worth it. So this is, as the title suggests, a performance of the Vigil album. It's his debut solo album, and it celebrated its 30th anniversary, so he performed it live in its entirety. This is a full 2-hour show with all sorts on it. I mean, obviously you get the album itself, but he throws in a few things from Weltschmerz, his last solo album, which he still maintains is going to be his last. We'll see. He said that before. And then Fugazi's on there as well, but he doesn't overload it with Marillion. He really sticks to the topic. It's a brilliant, brilliant album. If you're somebody that loved that first Fish solo record, this is a real wonderful kind of 360 come back to where it all began solo for him. And then you get a full, so that's 2 discs on CD. You get the Blu-ray DVD where you get the whole thing with Dolby Atmos and 5.1 mixes if you have the sound system for it. A half-hour making of and behind-the-scenes video, a 50-minute documentary about the tour itself, and then being cancelled due to COVID, and blah, blah, blah. And then you get an entire audio concert that is an alternate version of the concert itself. So all the same tracks, just in alternate versions from other dates on the tour. And then you get, on top of that, another 2020 Fish in the Lemon Tree live 85 minutes. So you get about 4 hours worth of live fish on this. And that's not including all the different versions of the audio itself. You get only the one concert on video itself on the Blu-ray, but you get 3 full concerts on audio. And again, CD1 and CD2 are the Leamington from November 2021. Leamington is where they do the Marillion weekends and things. It's very much home territory for Marillion. And again, when Fish releases these things, it always gives you in a lovely presentation with he does go on a bit, doesn't he? He loves his liners. So yeah, he's a frustrated novelist. But really, you get kind of not just a tour diary or anything like that. You get kind of his thoughts about the whole thing, the album, how it came together, and then how it's progressed. And it's a full book, really. I mean, it is a book with sporadic photographs rather than these things that just pad it out with photos, which can be a bit lazy. And as always, we get Mark Wilkinson's done some new artwork with for Derek. So yeah, phenomenal stuff. Kind of revising his original Vigil cover. So yeah, fantastic stuff.
Maybe so who's in the band on that tour?
It is just his latest band. Let's see if it's got the full lineup listed on the back here. He's just changed websites, but I believe if you still go to the old one, it directs you, by the way. So it's fishmusic.scot. It is Steve Vantis on bass, Gavin Griffith on drums, John Mitchell on guitar, Spencer Cousins on keys, Doris Brendel, not Doris Grendel, that's a different person, on back. That's a Marillion in joke for the fans there. On backing vocals, and then you get a few kind of guest people who were only at one of the performances. Marcel Singer on guitar, on the Fish and the Lemon Tree, and Lean Holmes on keys. So yeah, phenomenal. It looks great. It's really well filmed. Sounds fantastic, and most importantly, Fish sounds good on it as well. He's kind of well known. His voice has, he admits himself, he sung far too hard in the late 80s and kind of killed his own range. Night after night, trying to hit the notes that he was doing on records. He should have tried to bring it down a bit. But he's lived with that for so long now that he knows how to kind of work his way around that. So yeah, that's a brilliant live release from Fish. But you can't talk about one lead singer of Marillion without jumping to the other, because you always get the debate. So this is the new release from Steve Hogarth, H Natural Live. He releases something every year. Tends to be his Christmas concert, which this is, but it isn't a Christmas themed concert. There's a couple of Christmas tracks on it, but essentially he does this as just like the fan show. He goes into a big cathedral. In this case, it was the Evangelist Church in Oxford, or Saint John the Evangelist, and he does a kind of I don't want to say takes requests, makes it sound like a karaoke or something, but he kind of knows what fans want to hear. So he does some rarities and things that you wouldn't get to hear on normal shows. And then he does some bizarre covers as well. So he does Marillion stuff like Fantastic Place, Half the World, Not Your Fault, My Love Will Protect You. Mark Kelly joins them for a couple of tracks, comes out and does Neverland, Estonia. But then he does covers like Way Over Yonder by Carole King, Rocket Man by Elton John, The Model by Kraftwerk, on a Christmas show. Everybody Knows by Leonard Cohen. Nothing tells me Christmas like Leonard Cohen's lovely vocals. But yeah, and then Karma Police by Radiohead, Cloud Busting by Kate Bush. So all over the shop, absolutely all over the shop. So it's like a mixture of his era Marillion with whatever random covers he wants to do right now, and then a couple of things like the Christmas song and Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, and it all finishes with All You Need Is Love. Apart from then he comes back out to do Going to a Town, and then Joni Mitchell's Free Man in Paris. So this is phenomenal stuff. Steve H has lost none of his voice whatsoever. You don't need to have that discussion when it comes to his voice. So it's only on DVD, unfortunately, but it's released through Racket Records. So just like this is only released through Fish's site, this is only released through Marillion's site, Racket Records. So highly recommended both. If you have a preference for one over the other, you won't be disappointed whichever one you choose. Or you could do the sensible thing and just love them both.
There you go.
The curse is real.
That
Yeah.
sounds pretty cool. I have to check those out.
Cool. So for those of you who follow us on social media, and specifically Scott has kind of hinted that he might go in a certain direction on today's Curse of the Collector show, perhaps. So I'm curious to see what he comes up with. So Scott, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, welcome to the first installment of Pardo's Punk Parade. We're psyched. Yeah, this isn't actually Curse of the Collector at all. Kidding. But happy first anniversary to everybody.
Right.
My first pick, it is kind of down the punky sort of road, but it's not straight up punk. And this is first for me because it's a book. It's a rock bio, and it's Trouble Boys.
Ooh.
The true story of the Replacements by Bob Mayer.
Okay.
And this is a band I've just loved for decades. Loved them since 1988. Back then, they were still active, touring, releasing albums. They weren't a straight up punk band, but they had a pretty punky sound, particularly on their first couple of releases. Sorry, Ma, I forgot to take out the trash from 1981, and Stink, an EP from 1982. Pretty punky on those.
The sound title is in it. It's in the
Yeah,
title.
I mean, you know from the title, what direction they're kind of going there.
Yep.
And they were formed in Minneapolis in 1979. I had the privilege of seeing them 2 times before they called it a day in 1991. I was visiting my brother at college, and his roommate actually turned me on to their albums, Tim and Pleased to Meet Me, which were the 2 most recent albums at the time. And I immediately took to them. I made a tape of his records, and I played the hell out of them over the next several months. Eventually bought the vinyl records and backtracked to the earlier part of their catalog. Loved their fire and their energy, their just don't give a fuck attitude, and the self-deprecating humor in Paul Westerberg's lyrics. There's a lot of that. And they were probably the first band I liked that didn't have any hits on the radio. And as I found out more about them in the pre-internet age, of course, I discovered that as great as their albums were, they had a tendency to play sloppy and self-destruct on stage. The book cites many instances of the band's legendary and infamous drinking and debauchery, and how often that led to disastrous performances. In fact, the higher the stakes were at a show, the more likely they were to go into train wreck mode. Yeah, they just could not help themselves. Alcohol usually played a big part in that. And sometimes they would just play bad on purpose out of spite if somebody pissed them off. If record label executives were in the audience, you could pretty much count on a shit show.
That's a perfect example of a band that just says, we don't give a fuck.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't care who's here, what the stakes are. There's 5 people in the audience, right, or 100,000.
They could also be quite great when they wanted to be. And that's that. And like I said, on record, every one of those records I love. And you can see how they grew and improved over time too. That was the cool thing. But when they made an effort, it could be an incredible show. I happened to see both ends of the spectrum. My first show I saw them, they opened for Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers on the Full Moon Fever tour, 1989. And while that wasn't quite the mess that some of the performances cited in the book were, I would say the set was uninspired, to say the least. Part of the problem may have been that wasn't really their crowd, and they probably weren't well suited for arenas. Fair to say I was disappointed. Petty, on the other hand, did not disappoint, but more on that later. Saw them a year and a half later at a much smaller venue, the Texas Union Ballroom on the University of Texas campus in early 1991. Set list was perfect. They played their asses off, and it was like a different band. They owned the room. Part of the reason for that may have been that Paul was actually sober and had stopped drinking prior to the start of the tour. However, Tommy, his frequent drinking partner, he was still drinking heavily, but he usually took his cues from Paul. So I guess that's why they had a much better performance. Unfortunately, this would be their final tour, and they played their final show at Grant Park in Chicago on the 4th of July in 1991. I have a bootleg of that show. It's excellent. So this is what you call a warts and all kind of bio. If you're looking for a book that just showers them with endless praise and overlooks the faults and gives you a sugar-coated accounting of events, well, you might want to look elsewhere. This isn't for you. But why would you want that? A true Bats fan would not want that. They were known as much for their faults as they were for their fuck-ups. And as they were, they never tried to hide that, basically. Mayer makes a great case that in spite of their shortcomings, and maybe partially because of them, that this is still a great legendary band, one for the ages. Westerberg was an outstanding lyricist. Tommy Stinson became an accomplished bass player as he literally grew up on the road. He was only 12 when the band started. They grew as a band, or at least, like I said, in the studio, and when they occasionally gave pretty good performance. So this book, it's going to make you laugh, it's going to make you cry, and it'll even make you pissed off in some places. Their original guitarist, Bob Stinson, this guy right here, had a tragic upbringing. He was physically and sexually abused by his stepfather starting at the age of 7. Spent much of his teen years in and out of juvenile detention and developed substance abuse issues at an early age. And he saw music as a way out of his downward spiral. Being in a band gave him a purpose, for a while anyway. Surprisingly, an early influence on his playing was Steve Howe from Yes. Who knew? But he encouraged his brother Tommy to play bass, and Tommy is this one. Like I said, he's just a kid here. Yeah. So he encouraged Tommy to play bass, join him in his band, and he learned his craft in the clubs of Minneapolis, like First Avenue, and the Longhorn, and eventually on the road. And it was during this time that they earned their nickname Placemats, which later got shortened to Mats. So a lot of fans call them the Mats. Drummer Chris Mars was a relatively quiet one, worked as an artist on the side. And the band changed directions when singer and main songwriter Paul Westerberg, this guy right here, joined the band. Paul wanted to front a punk band, and Bob resisted that at first. They were kind of doing like Yes covers, things like that. And Bob resisted that at first, but he took to the new direction pretty well, and eventually he found his wheelhouse there. The book covers the relationship with their first manager, producer, and promoter, Peter Jesperson, who got them signed to Minneapolis-based independent Twin Tone label. He believed in them when no one else would. He first booked them in clubs where they played with local rivals like Husker Du and Soul Asylum. So after the relative success of their 4th album, Let It Be, this one, beautiful album, they got signed to Sire Records in 1985 by Seymour Stein. Rest in peace. We just lost him about 2 weeks ago. And he signed a lot of great bands in the 80s, 70s and 80s. So Tim, the next one, that was their first one for Sire. That was their biggest seller yet, and it did pretty well on the college circuit. That got them noticed enough to be on Saturday Night Live. And that appearance is mainly remembered for Westerberg dropping the F-bomb while they were performing on live television. And they got banned from the show for that, but it added to their notoriety, of course. There's no bad press, right? The Tim tour was marked by a lot of incidents like that, blowing shows. And they kind of were gaining a reputation as screw ups, and there were as many people coming to see the spectacle as there were actual fans of the band. Did I hear a horn? Anyone? Anyone?
Voices in your head again, Scott. Sorry.
What's that?
Voices in your head.
Maybe so. So after that tour, Bob Stinson, original guitar player, he got fired. He wasn't adapting to the less raucous and more tuneful nature of direction of the band, and he only played on 3 of Tim's songs. He kind of gotten on in his own little world. I mean, they were all doing drugs at this point, but he was kind of going off on his own and just not really even associating with the band. So it just didn't seem like he was really fitting in anymore. So they canned him after that tour. He never really got control of his demons, and in 1995 he died at a very young age of 35. Their next album, Pleased to Meet Me, this one right here, was recorded as a trio. Guitarist Slim Dunlop joined them on the tour for that album. Fast forward about 2 years to the Tom Petty tour. Ben Montech, keyboardist for Heartbreakers, he was a fan and was instrumental in getting them on the tour. And it started off pretty well with the best of intentions, but eventually, the heavy drinking and the drugs and their own worst tendencies got the better of them. And they liked Petty, but after a few days, they noticed that his set lists never changed. And this kind of bugged Westerberg. So basically, the Mats were constantly changing their set lists. They wouldn't play the same songs in a row 2 nights in a row. And perhaps that's a valid criticism, but to be fair, it's a common practice for many arena bands to pretty much do the same set list night after night. And most fans are only going to see them once on a tour. They're not going to know the difference, as long as they're given a good performance, right? Anyway, I can vouch that Petty and the Heartbreakers were great in that show. It didn't sound phoned in at all. Anyway, Regardless took to openly mocking Petty on stage and playing sloppy covers of their songs. Needless to say, neither the crowd nor Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers were amused. This went on for a while, but toward the end of the tour, they actually delivered some pretty strong sets. Westerberg claimed that one night they actually blew Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers off the stage. Make of that what you will. But apparently they played well enough that they got complimented by Mike Campbell after the show, despite the bad blood that had developed. And he told them, you guys were brilliant. You can be brilliant when you want to be. So why don't you want to be? And they didn't really have an answer for him. So they soldiered on for one more album. So this one, Don't Tell a Soul, or that's not Don't Tell a Soul. This is All Shook Down. Excuse me. And that started out as a Westerberg solo album, actually. The band had actually broken up for a little while. Essentially, it is a Westerberg solo album. The band members do play on a few tracks, but it's Paul's baby. They threw together what was left of the band. Chris had quit the band at this point, and they took on Steve Foley as the drummer for that tour. And they took their final bows in Chicago on July 4th, 1991. Less than 3 months later, Nirvana's Nevermind was released, and that kicked off a huge alternative tidal wave, due in part to the influence of bands like The Replacements. They just couldn't win for losing, But anyway, there have been a lot of theories on why they weren't more commercially successful. They were too early, it was wrong place, wrong time, not enough promotion, which is total bullshit if you read the book. The book cites many instances of the Warners shelling out big bucks to promote the band. A lot of it was just self-sabotage. At the end of the day, their biggest problem was themselves. Great as they were in the records, they were often sloppy live, and sometimes they wouldn't even finish a set. They sabotaged themselves at every turn, destroyed property, showed up too drunk to play, made enemies, burned bridges, et cetera, et cetera. And for a fan like me, it's a little frustrating sometimes to read just how often they squandered their talents. They just couldn't get out of their own fucking way. They were their own worst enemies. So I guess the fact that they didn't play the game may be one reason that some people were drawn to them. They didn't quite make the big time, so they never really sold out, right? It adds to their mystique. But maybe if they had played it just a little, maybe they could have been huge. That being said, they did pretty well for a bunch of drunken knuckleheads. Book ends on a positive note with a sober Paul and a sober Tommy reuniting in 2014 and doing a reunion show to the biggest audiences ever. Lots of cheering fans. And I saw them at the ACL Fest that year, like 2014, and they killed. They were great. And they really seemed to be having a good time. One of the things that makes this band so great for me is their lyrics. I'd like to just share a few as I close this out. Sorry, I'm going long. On Bastards of Young from Tim. God, what a mess. On the ladder of success, well, you take one step and you miss the whole first rung. The ones who love us best are the ones we'll lay to rest and visit their graves on holidays at best. The ones who love us least are the ones we'll die to please. If it's any consolation, I don't pretend to understand them. On Can't Hardly Wait. On Pleased to Meet Me. Jesus rides beside me. He never buys any smokes. Ashtray floors, dirty clothes, and dirty jokes. On Here Comes a Regular, also on Tim. Opportunity knocks once and the door slams shut. That's Replacements all the way. On I Don't Know from Pleased to Meet Me, one foot in the door, the other one in the gutter. That's them in a nutshell. In closing, I don't think you have to be a fan of the band to enjoy this book. It's a pretty engaging read, and the author did an awesome job researching it over the better part of a decade. It's full of those great stories about the band paying its dues. I like those kind of stories. That's really most of the book, though, because the Mats never really made it, and so they were always paying their dues, basically. Call their music punk, call it post-punk, alternative, indie rock, I really don't care. At their best, and in spite of themselves, this band embodied the true spirit of rock and roll, and that ain't nothing. So
in the end, that's what it's all about.
In the end, that's what it's all about. Comments, criticisms, questions.
It's funny you mentioned Tom Petty, because I'm actually just finishing up Warren Zane's Tom Petty biography, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. And I'm like on the last 20 or 30 pages. So
I might have to check that out.
Yeah, it's really good. I bought that after we did the Tom Petty show here on the channel, and I got around to reading it. So I've been reading it on and off for the last couple of months, because I've been reading all sorts of other stuff. So I can generally read a couple books at a time. And I said last week I definitely want to finish it because I have other stuff I want to get into. And it's one of those books where I think, and I think Davey talked about this a couple episodes ago when you were mentioning the Halford biographies. Mm-hmm. It's like, for me, I've read so many rock biographies, and I'm at the point, it's like, I don't know if I need the first 50 pages, what they did as kids and all. I don't really care about that anymore. I want to know about them, the the paying the dues and the struggles and the success and the failures and the addictions and the loves and the all that's, I want all that stuff. That's right. Kind of, and the music, right? Talking about the music. It's like
there's definitely plenty of that here. No
yeah, and most of the good ones have a lot of that, and that's what makes them good. So that sounds like a good one. Cool. Well, thanks.
Yeah, like I said, you might even enjoy it. I know this isn't up in your alley music wise, but it might be a book that you enjoy.
Well, I've enjoyed a lot of good rock and roll stories for bands I don't really, or artists I don't really give you shit.
Yeah, I know you and Martin did a show about books, and Martin mentioned he read a Dean Martin book that he's not even a Dean Martin fan, and he loved it.
Yeah. So it's a good story is a good story, right?
And Davey, they do mention Alex Chilton in here. They crossed paths with Alex a few times. He was going to produce Tim, but that didn't work out. They ended up getting Tommy Ramone.
Yeah, Paul and Alex, not a good combination. Two very combustible characters at the best of times.
That's true. That's true. But yeah, he does play on Can't Hardly Wait, and of course they paid tribute to him in song.
Yep.
One of their best ones.
Yep.
Cool. All right, Jamie.
All right. I need to read more books. I start books. I just finish the books. You can take a reservation, but it's hard to hold the reservation. It's just very hard for me to finish it. And I can't believe you read more than one at a time, Pete. I would be mixing matching stories. Like if I read
here's the thing though,
do that.
Jamie. So like I'll have a rock biography going. And
right.
like maybe like a horror or fantasy or like a Stephen King book at the same time. And then there'll be a couple like graphic novels and things. So
so different.
Yeah, you won't get that stuff mixed up.
Yeah, like I couldn't read two Stephen King books at the same time. That I couldn't.
Right. You'd mix and match. Yeah. Like if I read a Tom Petty book and a Led Zeppelin book at the same time, a month later, I'd be telling, did you know Tom Petty fucked a girl with a shark? I'd be mixing and all right. So I went to go see this band called Night Demon last week. As you can see, the stuff that I bought here. And they played at a little place called Ace of Cups here in Columbus, Ohio. And I absolutely love this place. I've been going since 2014. The first band I ever saw there was Baroness. And I fell in love with it instantly. You walk in, they shut the doors behind you. Almost like the Red Wedding. You know, you can't get out. No TVs. So I don't care if the Buckeyes are in a national championship game in Columbus, Ohio. You better check your score. It's all about music, and it's all about booze, and it's all about good time, and that's why I love it to death. Another reason why I love it is because I wish I would have done it with Baroness, but you go to the merch table early on, and I was like, oh, I have these albums. But albums of the band, I wait for them to sign it. And they normally come right on over after the set. Like you're standing around in the alleyway in the back with a Sharpie waiting. No, they just come to the merch table and so that's what happened with, and just to give you like an idea of how small the place is, these are pictures I've taken. Haunt the place, they were really good. But if you hear one Haunt song, you kind of heard them all. Of them, the post on Facebook. I'm like, what song should I play? It doesn't fucking matter. Any spot of any song, it's kind of, that fun, almost like pop song mentality songwriting, put the guitars, but they're really fun. And there's Night Demon. There I am in the back by the bar. And Satan closed. And Satan was a lot better than I expected. The lead singer, what's his name? Brian Ross. He comes on looking like an overweight Bobby LeBlanc, kind of like he came out of his mom's basement. But he had a real charm about him, that English charm, and he sounded great, and the band sounded great. So, of course, I went to the merch table and I got the signed Night Demon new album, which is really good. I like these guys because they throw in a little darkness here or there, not the band, the darkness, a little bit of doom every once in a while. They mix it up. They're not quite like Haunt, where every song has got the gallop and a big hook. And this is like a B-sides album. This is the new one, actually, right here. And you can see two guys signed that one. Then I was thinking, I've had a lot of bands sign shit over the years at Ace of Cups. So let me just go through them real quick. This was in 2015. Isaiah Mitchell signed my Earthless album.
Nice.
And I told him, dude, I said, I can't believe you can sign that and your fingers aren't bleeding. Because their set was a 45-minute guitar solo, the end. But it never got boring. Holy shit, they were great.
Yeah.
I went to go see this little side project of, you may know, you may not know, Tony Foresta from Municipal Waste. He had a little side project, Iron Reagan, which is like this crossover punky metalish band. They did this one album. They were really fun. They're all about, kind of like the Suicidal Tendencies type thing. So I had them sign that. And then the opening band was Child Bite. And they were like a hardcore Crazy World of Arthur Brown is what, if the Crazy World of Arthur Brown was hardcore. Did I love it? Yeah, you know what? The guy gave 110% on stage. I'm like, that performance was worth the $25. So and it's a cool looking album, and you know, with the whatever foil type thing going on. Then I saw the Truck Fighters, and they're really good. If you never listened to them, like death, but they jam stoner desert rock, but they have hooks and stuff, and they're not too heavy. Then Spirit Adrift, I had the lead singer sign. Some of these are kind of hard to see, you know. And then Windhand, I brought my wife and sister-in-law to go see Windhand at a doom metal show, and got our picture taken with Dorothea Cottrell, I believe her name is, and we hung out with her for like an hour. Her and my wife got along.
Look at Grace wearing a Gojira shirt. Look at that.
Yeah, Grace has got the Gojira shirt on.
Go, Grace.
Because I think it's the last show I might have seen at the thing. So she was great, and I left, and I told her, "You come back to Columbus, and I'll see you again. I'll bring even more Black people. I swear." So she's like, "Something's wrong with you." So that was real fun. And the band that opened up, Satan's Satires, you know, I just bought it because I liked the album cover.
Yeah, it's an awesome cover.
Then I went to go see the best show ever that I saw at Ace of Cups, and that was with Yob. And there I am with the lead singer of Yob, drunk as a skunk. And his name is Mike Shent, and I had him sign this album right there, the CD right there. And they were amazing. Voivod, I was never the biggest fan of Voivod. I said, I bet you when I see them live, I'm going to turn into a fan. But we did hang out outside and talk about James Bond theme songs, our favorite James Bond theme songs. So they were great guys. There's just something about them that every rhythm I want to hear is not the rhythm they do for some reason. I was going to go see Paul Bearer there, but I checked the date before I bought a ticket. I'm like, bringing my mom to see Neil Diamond that night. God damn it. But they did play up the street a week later at a place called Scully's, and I got this EP signed. So that was cool. And they do a cover of Black Sabbath over and over on there that is great. Then I went to like the heaviest band I've ever seen, Brand of Sacrifice. But I know this guy from Banger TV, Bradley Zordragger, very odd last name, and he's kind of like promoting them, and he's kind of the band manager. So I went and I met him, and I had the band signed. But my God, I'm listening to them, and it's just I'm like, how do you write a song like this? Because it just sounds like chaos to me. We're gonna go pause and then go. It's very weird. And then I saw the band I'm wearing, Demiser, which is a newer death metal band. And I am real picky about death metal. And what I listen to on a regular basis has to have the right tone. It has to have enough, songwriting sensibility. It just can't be gruff vocals. That's a wall of noise. Whoa, 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 whoa. There's got to be a lot of aspects about it that I like. So, and Demiser checks all those boxes, and they were really good. So, yeah. So I'm, and as time goes on, be going back to Ace of Cups, and I'll be buying more shit to get signed. So, and it's a nice little collection of signed shit to have, even though they're not like A-list bands.
Doesn't matter.
They're important to me.
Yeah,
they're A-list in this house. So,
yeah. And it's cool that it's mainly stuff that you've gotten signed and collected from a specific venue that you can go to.
Yes,
and see cool bands, right? So yeah, that's
yes.
That's pretty. It makes it more.
I'm also collecting memories from that place too.
I was just going to say that, yeah, because you're not going to get going to a 50,000 seater arena show or stadium show, and you're going to buy an overpriced album or shirt or whatever, and there's no connection to the artist whatsoever there.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, cool. All right, Rick.
Well, happy anniversary, guys! I'm glad to be a part of the Curse crew. Before I start with the first pick, I got a follow up from my last episode. Because Pete shared the Santana and the Curse is Real, because I had it in my shopping cart before the episode was over. And it's awesome, by the way. It's fantastic. Great lineup. And because the last episode I talked about how I fell upon these books with the interview from Zeppelin, the Who, and the Beatles, one of our viewers, and again, I get a lot of feedback from the people that watch the show. And one of my shows, they must have got the date wrong because they came a day before and left me a package of the Beatles Volume 1, Volume 2 of the very similar kind of thing, different rare photos and interview CDs. Not in the greatest condition, but it was thoughtful that they took, I don't know where they came from. All they said was a note saying, oh, we had the wrong date, sorry I couldn't miss your show, but here's from an SOT and a Rick Labonte fan. And they didn't tell me who it was. It just left it. So I want to thank the person who sent this and left it at one of my shows for me to say, you got a package waiting for you. And I'm like, really? And it was like suspicious.
Surprise.
And like, you know, it wasn't threatening, didn't have a clock ticking in it like that. But I mean, it was
What's
fun.
this white powder?
Really nice gesture. And also,
Plenty of white powder backstage.
and what was really nice is that also, maybe because I didn't plug in my album, maybe because of the ricklabonte.com and Square, but my CDs got picked up, a few orders, and people told me about it. And even picked up people ordering my first album and my blues album. So really nice shot in the arm for the from this channel. You wouldn't believe how many people have ordered CDs, just like Jamie was actually one of the first 10 that ordered a CD when it was just about to come out. But it's really humbling to write a thank you note to somebody, send a CD to Australia, to UK, and all these different places around the world through this channel. So thanks again. It's really moving. Anyway, I wanted to say that in my last episode, we talked about that I made a mission to try to replace everything I had on vinyl when I went to the CD days. And I told you guys there's only one album outstanding. Well, there were two for the longest time. And I'll get into that in a minute. But this is one of them I still haven't replayed, called The Guitar Boogie, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and Jimmy Page. And what it is, it's a bunch of 45 that they worked together and released on a record. And it's never been printed on a CD. So I haven't got that one. So I'm still on a mission for that. But this one is being completed. And then this was at the Hollywood Bowl, Beatles live at the Hollywood Bowl 1977. Now, for the longest time, they didn't put this on a CD of any kind. And I remember getting this as a kid as part of my Christmas present because I love live music and, you know, it's cool to have the Beatles live. Now, what's interesting about this, because you know how it's hard to hear the Beatles with all the screaming crowd. And so this was a big project for George Martin to do. And basically he took two performances, actually three performances, which I learned to discover later, but on here that showed 2 dates, 1964 and a 65 concert at the Hollywood Bowl, and even shows you the ticket, August 23rd, August 29th, a year apart, almost to the date that they played at the Hollywood Bowl. And so I looked for this on CD for years. And at one time, you know, again, you know, I'm starting to get, well, maybe it's not possible until, you know, eBay and all those other tools that help you make the world a lot smaller. I found out in Spain, or maybe it's Greece, I can't tell, with the packaging that came originally. But I saw that they had the Hollywood Bowl live performance. But what I learned is the double CD, and it has all three entire performance, not what, you know, George could get the very best of the two recordings and make the best possible set list that you can have of it, because it comes out with a bang and ends with a bang. So this was really neat because now you even get the announcer warming up the crowd, telling them the rules all before, like it's like minutes before the Beatles and even after the Beatles. So it shows you the August 23rd, 1964, August 29th, 1965, August 30th, 1965, in its entirely, okay? So I'm like, wow, I even got something better now, but is it mixed like this album? No, it's actually like right off the soundboard, almost like they did it live off the radio. That was the mix the world heard. It wasn't touched up in a way that George could do his magic like he does, because you would need it. But nevertheless, I thought that was pretty fascinating. Over a period of time, I learned, because I'm a Beatles fan. You guys know I got every movie, every anthology stuff. Ron Howard put a film out called 8 Days a Week with the Beatles
Mhm.
on it.
Right.
And they highlighted, the sheer stadium concert, which is legendary, and the Hollywood Bowl. But later on, I learned that George Martin's son remastered the Hollywood Bowl using almost the same cover of this, the 8 Days a Week, live at the Hollywood Bowl. So now he took his daddy's work, cleaned it all up a little bit, and being that he could add 3 bonus tracks to this, he did. And so you had the normal, just like the record before, but now you get 4 bonus tracks. You can't do that. I want to hold your hand. Everybody trying to be my baby, and Baby in Black, and they sound wonderful the way he picked. And to be quite truthful, knowing that I have all 3 shows, I think Joy did pick the best version of those songs sonically and tempo wise to release in the first place. But what I didn't like about this record, to be truthful, is that it ended on Baby in Black. It's a beautiful song, great harmony, but it doesn't come out kicking ass like a rock song, It came off on a ballad instead of ending like what they done in this show. They ended with I'm Down. And there's a couple good rockers in there. Now I listened to I'm Down to see maybe why there's a reason why I didn't use that burner of a song, and it's because the vocals were fluctuating in and out, and so probably wasn't used. But there was other tunes. I Feel Fine, which kicked ass in both concerts. That would have been a great way to end the show. But there was also other gems that nobody got to hear, and I'm just gonna read those one. That if you have what I have here, you hear them doing If I Fell, which was unique to hear him do that. I Want to Be Your Man, which never was done. Ringo singing that. You didn't get that. There was a couple other songs like that where it's a unique. I'm Down was one of them, obviously, and I Feel Fine was another song on the 1965 concert that we never would have heard. So it's out there. I got it. So I'm glad that I able to get this and much more. So I only got one record left to make that work. So that's my first selection. But that was nice to finally get this thing happening. But it had quite a journey to get where we are today.
Must be pretty cool to know you only have one that you're seeking to do the replacement thing with.
That's it.
That's a lifelong journey, right?
One of these viewers might help me out with that. I mean, that was really nice. And again, thank you for those who were kind enough to buy my music and help me out with my collection. I appreciate it. It doesn't feel like a curse when you do that.
Exactly. So what does feel like a curse, though, occasionally, is when you get someone who you're good friends with, who you trust their musical vision and their likes and their dislikes, and you like-minded kind of love for music, who sends you a message out of the blue and says, "Hey, Pete, have you ever heard of this band?" And you're like, I've heard of and listened to millions of bands, well, not millions, but thousands, right? So usually when someone knows what I like and they send me a name I've never heard before, and they're like, "You would probably really dig this. I know what you like." And I'm like, "Oh, I never heard of that band before. Let me go investigate." And you go investigate. You're like, "Wow, that's really good." So what is my next step? Of course, to go out and try and find that. So the story here is that my good friend Ken Golden from the Laser's Edge, also part of the Prog Seat show, sent me a message a few weeks back saying, "Have you ever heard of this band, this US band called Madura?" He goes, "I know you like old Chicago." And I'm like, "I love old Chicago. I don't know who the hell Madura is," right? So he sends me a link to their debut album on YouTube, and I go and I listen to it. I'm like, "Holy crap, this is great. Well, how have I never heard of this band?" So then I go, I'm going to go search for it. He goes, "Well," he goes, I don't know if they've ever officially been released on CD. You could probably get some vinyl, but I know there are a couple of kind of like, bootleg labels, sort of, if you want to call them that have remastered them and reissued them, but they're not official. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I go out. I was able to find their 2 albums, right? One's from 1971, the other's from 1973. So again, the band is Madura. This is the first album. And this is the second album. So it's basically, and it's a weird history with these guys. So it's basically a trio of 3 guys, and they used a lot of other studio musicians. So it's Alan DiCarlo, Hawk Walensky, and Michael Tegza, and he was the drummer. The other two guys played multiple instruments. They became very, very friendly with the guys from the band Chicago. They were from Chicago. They convinced James William Guercio, who was the Chicago producer, to produce their two albums as well. Okay. So, and these were both on Columbia Records. Okay. I think they did some other stuff a little bit later on too, like some compilations and things, but those are their two albums. And they are stylistically kind of similar to Chicago, though maybe not as completely horn driven. There are some horns on these albums. It's very much like the early Chicago, a mix of like jazz and rock, little bits of blues, little bits of kind of like maybe Latin tinged rock too, some really good guitar playing, vocals throughout most of the songs, but there are some instrumentals. Some of the songs are very fusiony, like almost like Weather Report sort of type of thing. Very listenable. The guitar playing is terrific. If you like Terry Kath from the early Chicago records, I think you will really dig the guitar playing, because this guy, he's got that Terry Kath thing in him. When he explodes, he really explodes. Really good stuff. Maybe not as immediate as some of the Chicago material, but if you like the Chicago's first album, Chicago Transit Authority, if you like Chicago 7, which is much more of their kind of jazz fusion record, if you like the more abstract Chicago stuff and not like the big ballady hits type of thing, I think you'll really dig these guys. But like I said, they're not as horn driven. There are horns on the albums, but not as heavily. And there is like a lot of good electric piano and Hammond organ, good percussion and drums and rhythms and things like that. Really good stuff. Like I said, these are the two albums right there. The band is Madura. You can get these. I got these fairly inexpensively, and they are on Walhalla Records. Footprint Records, Valhalla Records. Again, pressed onto CD in the early 2000s from 1971, 1973. They sound really good to my ears. So if kind of early Chicago, early jazz fusion mixed with rock and a little bit of funk and blues and things like that, and pop is kind of your thing from the early 70s, I think you would really dig these albums. A very, very cool discovery. So thank you, Ken. So this, curse is real. So back to Davey.
Thank you. I'll be relatively quick because we've gone quite long in the first round. Happens when you get excited, though, doesn't it? That's what happens. You tend to just the first rounds, you just So play catch up. Recently, one of my favorite bands of the 60s, who don't get recognized as a legacy band enough, because they've never stopped releasing music. The Zombies released a new album. I've got a signed copy of the print and whatnot from Modern Direct. They've been kind of back together for 23 years, and kind of low key under the radar, still making records. So obviously people still associate them with here's the box set of Odyssey and Oracle, the CBS years. One of the essential albums of the 60s, but this version, the CBS years, has the stereo and mono version, but it also has R.I.P., the unreleased album from '69, when they get back together, because they kind of split up. Colin left the band, and because they weren't selling enough, and then all of a sudden Time of the Season becomes massive hit, and they get back together, but ultimately it falls apart, and this great unreleased album just happens to sit down there. So this is a very highly recommended compilation, but it pushed me towards, actually, do you know what? As much as I've always investigated and listened to and loved Rod Argent, and Argent, obviously, I've never given Colin's solo stuff enough of a chance. So I went back, and just as well, timing-wise, that this kind of happened when the new album came out, because Sundays have just re-released Colin Blunstone's solo debut, 1 Year, which is a fantastic record. If you're kind of Zombies is the more wistful, big string arrangements that can have you, like, so not so much like Time of the Season, but more like This Will Be Our Year, that kind of stuff. If that's your kind of Zombies, you'll absolutely love this. It's full of these big, massive, heartbreaking songs. Some fun as well, though. she loves the way they love her. Is really fun stuff. There's stuff on here like Mary, Won't You Warm My Bed sounds like literally Colin Blintstone's joined Motown. It's the weirdest kind of combination of the Zombies and Motown. And I say that it's a combination of the Zombies rather than just Colin, because there was no breakup like, oh, we're not talking anymore. His backing band here are Argent. So and Rod Argent produces it. So they always stuck together. And this version here of 1 year comes with a bunch of bonus tracks that have been titled That Same Year, which has got all sorts of outtakes and alternate takes, different tracks, live thing, blah 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 blah. But yeah, this is phenomenal stuff. He's got a great song called Caroline Goodbye, and it's about his ex-girlfriend Caroline they split up with. That Caroline was Caroline Monroe, so one for the Monsters Den, folks. Yeah.
Wow.
Caroline Monroe, 1969, they split up. Yeah. Wow. And in the 80s, she was still playing a teenager in some movies, and and that
she
April
showed up in a couple
Fool's Day
slasher films. I'm like, all right,
yeah,
she's obviously
yes.
probably in her 40s. It's like, all right,
yeah. So there you go. She was dating Colin Blintstone in the 60s, but in the 80s, in that April Fool's movie, she was still a schoolgirl. Yeah, explain that one. So yeah, for this reissue, they put in all sorts of lovely liner notes, and it's annotated by Colin himself. He breaks them down track by track, so it isn't just a general overview. And of course, we keep our hype stickers. That's the way the good Lord intended. And then not from BGO for a change, but just the next two records are on Floating World Records, another twofer, and this is album 2 and 3. And it is, to say it's more of the same sounds like a detriment, but this is Ennismore and Journey. And again, his backing band here are Argent, and we're talking peak era Argent, right in the middle of God Gave Rock and Roll to You and Hold Your Head Up and whatnot. So yeah, it's essentially, if you want to combine the Argent stuff and this stuff, you've basically got the Zombies as if they were still a band, and then combine some of the stuff from the R.I.P. album. You've kind of almost got this missing Zombies era. And then they do reunite as Blintstone and Argent, and then say, why don't we just call ourselves the Zombies? It'll sell more tickets anyway. And that's what they've done ever since. So since 2001, they've just been the Zombies again. So yeah.
On tour, they had a Zombie 1 and a Zombie 2 tour, and then they finally joined forces and did a whole show together. But the set was still split up with two bands. The first thing we're doing all the hits like She's Not There, all these wonderful songs that bleed up to that album you're talking about, 1968, Odyssey and
Odyssey and Oracle.
Yeah, so and then they did that at the second half, the entire record, which is a cult classic. It's like that one, they put it up there like Dave Future Past and Sgt. Pepper for being a unique album of that time. And
it's the most psychedelic pop album ever.
Yeah, and then they came back and played the encore together, Time of the Season and a few other things. So it was a really fantastic show. And just like they signed that album for me, every one of them that played on that record, that living played on that, signed that record. And it was a big deal. It was a really good show. And they sound just like you hear the record. They do deliver.
Well, I'm glad to hear it because I'm seeing them in 10 days exactly.
Well, this was a few years ago.
About 300 yards in that direction.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to that. Very small venue. It's an old church and it's downstairs. So it's an old crypt really, which is rather exciting. That's another kind of Monsters Den kind of thing, isn't it? Going to see the zombies in a crypt. So
Perfect.
Looking forward to that. Yeah, and they are kind of famous for that, Rick, for like being notoriously nice guys. I mean, doesn't that just sum them up that even after they split up, there's Rod still producing the records for Colin, and Colin still does vocals for Rod on some of his solo stuff. So yeah, the Zombies, but especially Colin Bluntston's solo stuff should not be overlooked. So yeah, high recommend.
Cool. Good stuff.
Nice.
All right, Scott, back to you.
All right, sir. Just a couple of things before I get started on my actual second pick here. Forgot to show off my Paul Westerberg autographed copy of Don't Tell a Soul. Actually, I did not stand in line for this. My wife did. he was on a solo tour and stood in line at Tower Records for me. And it's a Scott to Scott, missed you. So that's pretty cool. And I am wearing replacement shirt today.
There you go.
My camera, the way it's set up, it just my shirts don't show. Anyway, I'll shut up about the replacements now. Just wanted to follow up. We talked about Winery Dogs last month.
You did get it. Cool.
I did get the album. Great album. Eventually, I'll go see them on tour. I did miss them this time around, but I would like to see them. I'm a little curious, Jamie, though. I know you're not big on Rival Sons. This isn't that different from Rival Sons to me. What do you think?
I bought a Rival Sons CD not too long ago. It was $1. I said, all right, I'm going to buy one. I'm going to sit down with it. It's not 100% great, but it's not 100% bad either. And I know Winery Dogs isn't that far behind. That's why I never gave them a shot until Rick gave me the album as
Obviously,
a
you like
album
them.
homework assignment.
Concert.
Yeah, live. I'm sure I would love Rival Sons live too. I'm sure I'd have a good time. But yeah, they're not that far behind, but there's a little extra spice in that. It might be the Chris Cornell kind of too that makes me, long for Soundgarden a little bit and kind of resonates with me too.
Yeah, Richie's got that Cornell thing going on a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's more of a kind of, I don't know, a lineage back to Creedence Clearwater for Rival Sons or something much more Americana style, I think.
Yeah, I can see that.
It all comes down to tone for me, man. The older I get, and Rival Sons just has a certain tone that I'm
not saying they're carbon copies or anything, but I'm just saying
right.
They're not great band flavor.
They have different tones, kind of, so that's all the world of difference.
Yeah. New album out next month though for the Rival Sons, Dark Fighter.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to that.
I'm sure I'll see 10,000 copies posted on my page. Let's Get Physical on Facebook. If you like physical media, come and join my Facebook page and post your picture of the new Rival Sons next month.
Or watch my video of it on Cinemaflix and Music Picks.
Or stay right here and watch my review of it here on Sea of Tranquility on Wednesday, the day that nobody watches videos here. So anyway,
real quick, I also picked up this. This is New Pornographers, great band. Sort of, I guess you call them indie rock, but their sound is for the most part kind of new wavy sort of pop.
Mm-hmm.
But, this one's a bit more introspective and a little darker than their normal albums. It's a slow grower, but I'm enjoying it. Nico Case always sounds great.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
And then I following up on my King Biscuit.
Oh, there you go. Tommy Bolin.
I got the Deep Purple. Sounds great. I mean, there's a couple of tracks I can do without, but for the most part, it's a pretty damn good performance. Yeah, they do Georgia on My Mind. I don't need that.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a much better Tommy Bolin performance in Purple as opposed to the Japan one, which is not very good at all.
No.
Yeah.
They did another version of that album you have there. They call it Long Beach 76. We matched it a little bit, but all the same tracks are the same tracks. They just have a different cover. But right on.
So anyway, getting to my pick, as I've discussed on other episodes, I've really been digging on jazz fusion since I started watching SOT. I mean, I've always liked it, but I've been diving in more deep. And 1 year ago, when we did our first show, one of my 3 picks that I had for that first show, I chose a self-titled debut solo album by Jaco Pastorius and bass player extraordinaire for Weather Report. So I think it's only fitting that 1 year later, I should discuss Weather Report. And I just picked this one up recently in my travels at Half Price Books. Got this for $20. 4 discs. It's the legendary live tapes, 1978 to 1981. And it's got, again, 4 discs. Live material from 2 different tours with 2 slightly different lineups. You got the 78 tour, features, of course, Joe Zawinul on keyboards, Wayne Shorter on saxophones, Jaco Pastorius bass. and Peter Erskine on drums and percussion. And then in the 1981 tour, they add Robert Thomas Jr. As additional percussionist. And this set was released in 2015. And it's made up entirely of previously unreleased material. All Music said these recordings came from soundboards. But given that, I think the sound quality on here is surprisingly good. I have most of Weather Report's studio albums, pretty much all of them from the 70s, everything leading up to this, and as well as a couple other live albums they did. And while I think their studio albums are excellent for the most part, I think I might prefer the live albums, actually.
I would agree.
Yeah, and this one might even be my favorite of the bunch. And they really get a chance to show off their improvising skills, and they do not disappoint here. Whether
I
it's
think that one's a really good alternative, Scott. To you probably have the 830 album, which
I have 830 and I have the
It's
Live Tokyo.
yeah, I mean the
Tokyo
Tokyo for
and-
me is the best by far, but I think that the one you just got is probably a great alternative to the 830, which could arguably be a little too squeaky clean in spots. I think
Yeah.
I get that.
yeah.
Then there's live and unreleased is pretty great as well.
Yes, that is good.
Right. I'd say it's a great listen in the car or at home, or if I'm at my desk at work. Band works together like a well-oiled machine here, and it doesn't let up until the end of disc 4. One thing that people tend to point out as a shortcoming of the band is that there's no guitar. To be honest, I don't miss it here. I enjoy fusion guitar a lot, and there are many fine players in fusion bands, your John McLaughlin's, your Al Di Meola's, your Pat Metheny's. But in my opinion, I think Weather Report does just fine without one. And I think in some places you could even say Jocko is sort of taking on sort of a guitar role in some of it, you know.
I think every bass player they ever had kind of did that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in a sense. I mean, yeah, it's not just full on wailing, but yeah. And I listen to a good bit of acoustic jazz also, so I'm used to hearing jazz without guitar. So I mean, it's great, but I don't have to have it. Another criticism I hear, and perhaps it's valid, is that Joe's keyboards usually take center stage, and they often drown out Wayne's sax playing. And I would say on this set, Wayne comes in loud and clear on most of it. And I really love the Joe and Wayne duet at the start of the second disc. And Joe's piano and Wayne's sax come together in perfect harmony on that. It's a beautiful track. I'd say the only complaint I really have isn't about the music, but it's more about the packaging. It seems like it should have been done like a box set, you know, with like a hardcover book type format, you know. Because, you know, 4 discs, it seems like a box set, like it's box set worthy. Hello. Anybody hear that?
Yeah, there's a motorcycle drove outside my house.
Okay. It's like, what the fuck is that? Okay, anyway, yeah, it kind of makes the discs hard to get out. You know, it's got this, you know, they fold out like a wallet, and you know, they're kind of hard to get out without destroying the packaging. I hate that. And plus it's not standard CD size, you know, it's like it's too tall.
Just a little too big, yeah.
Yeah,
Not
it's like
big enough
I
for-
don't get the point in that.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I never understand that either. Why not make it DVD size then, and then you can put it with them at least? Like,
And put a DVD
Somewhere in between, right? It doesn't fit anywhere. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Wayne Shorter's passing. We just lost him less than a month ago. He was a giant in both acoustic and jazz fusion.
Yep.
And he had a long career, long life, left us with a huge body of just amazing music. And
Sure.
having played with Art Blakey, Miles Davis, Weather Report, all the numerous solo albums, both acoustic jazz and electric, he'll definitely be missed. And as will Seymour Stein of Sire Records, you know, who signed the Replacements and a lot of other great bands in the 70s and 80s to his Sire label. So that's my second pick.
Cool. I haven't listened to it yet, but George Lamy just sent this to me. Weather Report live in Austria in 1971.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, 2-disc set. So I'm excited to listen to this. And this, of course, again, they had a lot of great bass players in Weather Report. This has Miroslav Vitus on bass, who was tremendous. So from the early days of Weather Report. So I'm looking forward to
Is that a boot?
That it looks like it.
It's one of those,
Semi-legal grey market ones.
market ones. But I buy tons of this kind of thing, and they're usually they'll sound pretty good.
Oh, all right, I might have to
What
seek
what
that
we're
out.
really what we're really missing is though, and even with that, what Tokyo was 72,
Yeah,
and then
That mid-period.
837 to 9. We need stuff from like 75, 70. We need stuff from Tailspin in that kind of era.
Oh yeah, which one of their best albums, right?
Yeah, and there's nothing out there live from that era at all. So
Yeah, I would agree. Cool. All right, Jamie.
All right, I'm going to talk about some new music. First of all, real quick, I'm not going to say much because I'm sure Pete's going to review both of them. These came out, Overkill and Metallica, this weekend, and one of these sounds pretty fresh and entertaining and lots of cool new ideas, and one of them doesn't.
It's by Metallica.
Does. And on
packaging, it's going to go that way.
0 out of 72. Packaging is awful. No, if you want to know what the order of the songs, you either have to take the booklet out and go through the lyrics of all the pages, or take the CD out, or go online and Google it. Oh, look at that. Overkill in the back. There they are, right there. There's your list of songs. All right.
I long complained about that, man. It's like, if you can't have the track list on the back of the CD or album, it's like you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, and I hear Metallica has their own plant that's making these albums. I know the albums. I don't know if they're making the CDs, but I assume so. I don't know. But somebody, come on, man. So here's the thing with this new band and album that I been loving for the last month or two. There was a time in my life, and I talked about this before, sometime between 1989 and 1991, where my musical taste was shifting a little bit. I was straying away a little bit from the AOR and the few hair metal bands that I would listen to here and there, and I wanted something more, something different. This is like, I'm talking between Slaughter releasing their first album and Nevermind coming out. That small little gap there that was just a millisecond of time in the grand scheme of things.
1991.
Yeah, where, a lot of people think Nevermind came out of nowhere. It didn't. There was a shift going on, kind of like when a storm is coming. When a storm is coming, it just doesn't go sun, thunderstorm. The wind starts to pick up. The clouds come over. The leaves start to turn over, and you see the lighter side of the leaves. So you sense something's about to change. And when these albums were coming out, Soundgarden, Louder Than Love, I was listening to, I discovered Danzig 2. Like, this is something that, this ain't fucking Winger. Circus of Power started off as like this sleaze metal band, but they released Vices in 1990, and I still love it today. It's kind of like proto grunge, almost like The Cult with a little dashes of country in it. Believe it or not, it's so much fun. One of the albums that changed my life, The Front, the only album they ever released, from 1989. They later turned into Baker's Pink and released an album in 1993. And of course, this mammoth, the first Cult album that I bought for myself. I knew Electric beforehand. My buddy had it, but this is the first one I bought for myself. So this is where I was kind of shifting towards. So a band recently, I stumbled upon it literally. I never go on Bandcamp and just say, let me try out some bands. If I go on Bandcamp, it's because I heard of a band, read a review, one of you guys said something, then I go to Bandcamp and buy it. I just don't go on Bandcamp and start clicking on bands, trying them out. So I did about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, and I struck gold on my very first band. Out of all the bands on there, it's like 1849. People are out there looking for gold for years, and I just walked in and did one scoop and found a nugget, and I said, I'll see you guys later. And everyone's like, what the fuck? So I stumbled upon this band called Old Mine Universe, and what they do on this album called, what the hell is it called? This Vast Array, getting caught in my chair, is they capture that moment between 89 and 91. This could fit right in that little era that will never be remembered. It's already forgotten, and it'll die with my generation. Somehow they capture it and they release an album that just fits right into there, and it makes me feel, I get it when people only, this makes me understand why people only listen to music from their younger days, because it makes them feel young. This kind of makes me feel like I'm 21 again, even though it's new music. Their influences, now they're three of the guys are from Canada, two of the guys are from South America. I don't know how they met, probably online. I don't know much about them. There's no tour, there's hardly any merch. Musical influences, they say, include Black Sabbath, early Judas Priest, Trouble, Masters of Reality, Kyrus, Rush, maybe 90s Rush, and Neil Morris, etc. I don't know. There's a lot there, so I don't know what etc. means, because you can go right into that.
Yeah, right.
Now, a lot of this I don't hear. Do I hear early Judas Priest? No. I hear Masters of Reality, though. So Martin Popoff himself is quoted by reviewing this album, which is amazing, because here's the thing. My favorite album, how many albums does Martin Popoff review that's new a year?
He hasn't
Maybe
done it
one?
in a long time.
Yeah.
Maybe one. So last year, Guild of Others was my favorite album of the year. Martin Popoff reviewed it. This album so far is my favorite of the year. Martin Popoff reviewed it. It's like he's on the internet and I'm a few steps behind him, following him for some reason. It's very odd. But this is what Martin said. He had a lot to say. These guys have found the holy grail locus between retro rock, like Sheepdogs, I don't fucking know Sheepdogs, and the best of Swedish stoner rock, while also massaging in proggy traditional European metal moves just to confound and impress the most ardent metal musicologist. It's Martin when he starts saying that type of shit. And then the biggest Martin phrase is coming up. I'm also hearing Glenn Danzig, and Ian Astbury, in the vocals. And come to think of it, this is super smart. Oh, Martin. If I didn't know you wrote this, I sure as shit know you wrote it now.
Yeah.
And this is super smart, like the surprisingly fecund and creative modern day The Cult. Non-stop hard rock delivered with edgy, bright production that's especially potent to the guitar position. There you go, Martin. I can't put it any better myself. It's just
super smart.
It's
super smart, eh?
Super smart. You can hear his Canadian accent when you say it with his Canadian accent in your brain. Super smart.
Yep, that's funny.
So yeah, I love it to death. Go out on Bandcamp and at least sample some of the songs and try it out.
Cool.
So,
well, now we need the story from Martin's side about how
does he find
reviewing
these
the
bands?
one album a year, because his whole thing is he doesn't care about new music. He's not got time for it. So how the hell is he doing that?
Where's it come from? Where did they find this quote? Where did he post this?
Writing books.
And you know what this album does too? That albums like this should do. It ends on a big epic. Nice. One long song. It's the last song. The second half of the song is just a big jam out. Ends. No bonus track to say, oh, but here no, it just ends and it's over. It's only like 43 minutes long, 44 minutes long. Always them wanting more. Metallica. Always leave them wanting more. My God, I was listening to Metallica yesterday, track 5. I literally said out loud, oh my God, this song is too fucking long. I often say my life is like a Metallica song, going on a little too long and nothing's changing.
I said to Jamie yesterday, I was like, the crazy thing about the new Metallica, because I just got it and I spent the afternoon listening to it yesterday, and I don't want to say too much because I'm going to be reviewing in a couple of days, but literally I put it on and like it felt like it was 2 hours later
It's a day and a half.
And the album is still on, and I'm like,
Yeah.
look at this thing. It's like, hasn't it been like 2 hours since I put this in?
Yeah.
It wasn't
You-
quite.
Somehow
you
they
need to
crammed
shave
on
again.
168 minutes of music onto an 80-minute CD. I don't know how they did it.
Pushing the boundaries, yeah, just a little bit.
So
I like
think
what I heard.
The scariest thing about it is when you open it up and you see that picture of James looking 300 years old. I mean, what the hell? Why have they used the most awful pictures of the guys to make them look just ancient?
Flips this way, flips that way, flips that way, flips this way.
Show that picture of James.
It just kind of falls out.
Get that picture of James up because he looks like, I don't know, it's like he's aged 40 years during the pandemic.
Oh, my word.
Yeah, look at that. That looks
Yeah.
like Charlie Musselwhite or something.
I transport whiskey over the state lines. That's what I do.
Yeah. Sam Elliott's dad. I mean, geez, Louise, that is something else.
The whiskey smuggler.
I think they've done bad pictures and bad packaging to distract us all from Lars's drumming for a change. I think that just, yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. How can you get worse with practice? I'll never understand it.
More on this topic on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And Jamie, maybe in the comments below, you can drop the name and the Bandcamp link to the band you just talked about. I'm sure people.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that'd be a good
Will
idea.
do.
Cool. All right, Rick.
Okay, before my last pick, real quickly, between last time and this time, I got some signatures along the way. Pete and I did a ranking on Tea Party, and this was the last album called The Black Blood Moon Rising, and that was the only thing I didn't get signed to this year. And then when I saw Winery Dogs, I got their DVDs, and they signed it while I was there, and Sydney showed me this DVD. So
Is
anyway.
Tea Party still around?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like I
Okay,
said,
okay.
I just saw them in concert not too long.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they brought a symphony to play their music for that show. Just Windsor and Sun, and then now they're doing their own thing. But anyway, one of the things that I shared last time that I'm, being a Zepp head, I had to get everything Jimmy Page and Robert Plant and all that. Well, this one's got a double whammy fine because this checked the box of two great heroes of mine. And I don't think there's anybody in this channel that is a bigger fan of these two guys than me and Pete. And I give it all away when you say David Coverdale and Jimmy Page. And so they had that one album, which is, 30 years ago today, this year, they put out the Coverdale and Page album. And they only toured a little bit in Japan, and then it just disbanded. And before you know it, Robert Plant got Jimmy Page doing the Unleaded and the way they went. And so I've always been curious to hear what that band could have been like, right? And I've heard some bootlegs of the Tokyo show, or at least Japan shows. And I mean, it's just like any bootleg. It's you got to use your imagination through the thickness of this audio to try to use your imagination what that could look like, right? Well, what I got here, and I had to get that somewhere from Europe, a 97-minute double CD of the London rehearsal in 1993, preparing themselves for the tour. And so this is a couple of days of rehearsal, and they made a set list, like the running order of the show, of the best of what they had at rehearsal. And it's pretty cool because, I've always wondered what it would like to hear Coverdale cover Zepp and Jimmy Page playing Whitesnake. I mean, I'm a big fan of these bands. I had all everything they have, but I didn't have this. And that's, again, this is new between the last show and this show. So I think it's hot off the press, and I only got it for like a week. And I haven't left my CD.
It's been out for a while, Rick, because I got it last year. It's been out for a while.
Oh yeah, it's 2020. I'm just gonna say, but I didn't know it's this. Like I said, every time you leave it alone and you're doing other bands to catch up, something comes up on your radio and go, holy shit, I don't got that. I mean, George did it to us, me and Pete. We were talking about Deep Purple, but we never had the one with Joe Satriani played. Of course, we corrected that, didn't we? Anyway, so let me read this set list. What I imagine and what this show would be like. So it opens up with Automation Blues from their album, Slide It In, Rock and Roll, Over Now, Kashmir, Pride and Joy, Take a Look at Yourself, Take Me for a Little While, In My Time of Dying. And by the way, Page kicks ass in all these songs, even playing the White Snake guitar line, doing his own thing. I mean, he gave it some of the signature stuff, but he put his own spin on it, and it sounds very tasteful. And then the second disc, and that was 53 minutes right there. Second disc is at 44 minutes. Here I Go Again, Don't Leave Me This Way, nice version. Feeling Hot, Still the Night, Whisper a Prayer, Black Dog, and Shake My Tree. So pretty good potent stuff. So Pete, you got to get this.
It's pretty essential stuff.
I have to get it too.
Get it to complete it, and not only that, it's kind of ear candy to hear them working together. Now, I mean, is it awesome? You know, I mean, they're being reserved when the rehearsal or singing doesn't just throw it all out there. It's going through, but he did get carried away and singing some parts of this album. You can tell he's getting into it, and so it'd be nice for me and Pete. You know, Pete, you want to add this in your collection if you get it. So anyway,
what would have been even better, Rick, is if Coverdale and Page, because there was a lot of talk about, and in fact, I'm not even sure if it's come out or it's coming out of a anniversary edition of the Coverdale Page album, is to put out a box set that's got like a remix or a remaster of Coverdale Page and all that shit in a box set. Would have been perfect.
well,
Coverdale says it is happening. Coverdale says
they would talk about that, but David Coverdale did have a grievance that Jimmy and them in the beginning, because of COVID, they weren't going to meet, and he had some couple of tracks. He said they're awesome, that the world should hear. Now, am I going to get it in time by the end of this year? He wasn't sure about that. The last interview, he said, but there is songs that we never heard, and what he wanted to do, he made it, and it kind of didn't happen during COVID, but he wanted Page to do his mix, and I'll do my mix, and we do a remaster mix of what could be another version of these records. And then he said, but during the process, I discovered there's a couple of gems that the world haven't heard. But it would be nice to hear the rehearsal that nobody heard, like what we got here. So anyway.
I'm gonna have to hear that.
It's called the Studio Broadcast 1993 Tour Rehearsal 2 CD set.
Sound quality pretty good? Sound quality
it's pretty
decent.
good.
It's really
pretty
decent.
good.
I mean, you can tell it's in a studio, like one recording and everything, all the bleeding of the track. It's not like it's mixed properly, but you hear everything. You hear the whole performance, and the guitar's nice and loud. And the only thing I found is some of the backup vocals got louder than David in some of the track, but it's rehearsal, right? They're not, you know, they're fine tuning. They're just polishing in it before they.
Yeah, and it's not a mixed bit. It's not a mixed album or anything. It's
exactly
just a bootleg. Yeah, so.
Exactly. But it sounds clarity. You hear everybody in there, and it has a lot of power. You can definitely say, man, this would sound awesome on a big stage. No question.
Yeah.
Right?
My only reservation is Jimmy just does not sound right playing the White Snake stuff at all.
I liked what he did for Here I Go Again and a couple other things, but like he changed it. He did it what he wanted.
I actually am a little curious to hear how he sounds on those White Snake songs. You know, I mean, we've heard him.
I'd say DC sounds better on Zepp stuff than Page does on White Snake stuff. But maybe it's because DC picked the most unoriginal stuff for Jimmy to do. You know, do we really need another version of Here I Go Again?
Yeah,
right. That was my choice, because I think the Zeppelin picks are very cool. For the most part, but the White Snake stuff, I would have gone back to the early White Snake. But I guess
absolutely,
everybody knows, right?
I'd be all over that.
That's right. If they were doing ticket sales, they probably made this set list for the masses, right?
Oh, of course. Cool.
And Robert Plant came along and said, if you want to do an album with me, never talk to Herman again. Ever. That pretty much what happens, according to Coverdale,
Pretty much.
Yeah. Obviously, that album did push that discussion, because MTV just wanted Robert Plant to do an unplugged album, just an acoustic affair. And there's a lot of great gems he could have did from his own career and Jimmy. But then with all this showing all this muscle on this Coverdale Page album, Plant had to say, we're going to do something a little different. And they knew the appetite for more Zeppelin material was out there.
Yeah.
So he found that middle ground by bringing that Egyptian and the world music combined. But anyway,
Clarksdale and stuff, yeah,
definitely. David Coverdale, that work with Jimmy Page probably made Robert Plant said, "Oh man, if I don't get it with Page, it might never come back that road again. Who knows?
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
Cool.
Take us home, Pete. Take us
All
home.
right.
Yep.
So before I forget, because Rick kind of showed before something that he bought based on one of us showing something the last episode. I have it in the next room, but I did go out and buy that Stax box set that Jamie showed last episode.
Oh, I own that one too.
That is really good. That's
Yeah.
got a lot of plays on that. The wife even likes it quite a bit, which is always a plus.
Nice.
So yeah, so my final pick for today, I almost talked about this last time, and I hesitated because I'll be showing and talking about some of this in the Prog Seat show that Ken Golden and I are going to be doing, all about, like, it's going to be called a Latin Rock Primer. But I figure it couldn't hurt to kind of talk about one little kind of cool collectible thing that I picked up for that show. Anybody out there like Santana, right? I think we have some Santana fans who watch
I'm seeing them for the first time this summer.
There you go. You'll have a great time. Well, Carlos has a younger brother named Jorge. And Jorge Santana had a Latin rock band going at the same time that Santana was really big. The band was called Malo, M-A-L-O. And Malo were one of, other than Santana, probably the second most known Latin rock ensemble in rock at that time in the early 70s. So I found a box set put out by Rhino that has the first four Malo albums. It's kind of a weird box. I'll show it to you in a second. It's called Malo Celebracion, the Warner Brothers recordings. So you can kind of see the Malo.
Oh, I see it. Yep.
There a little bit.
Yeah.
And, there's nothing
Genau.
anywhere on here, right?
Who designed that?
You open it up, okay. You get
The same guy that designed this.
Yeah, same guy that did Metallica.
Yeah, I guess so, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The first album, okay. You get Malo Dos, second album.
Oh, that's so he's actually doing the numbers just like his brother. That's quite funny.
Yeah.
He's doing Santana too. Santana, that's funny. Dos.
Yep. And then the Evolution, and what's the third one called again? The hell is this called?
Not Trace.
No, it has to be called Tres. Come on, and then
No, it's not actually, but
Oh.
I can't even read it. But whatever the hell it's called. And these are the third and fourth right here. I mean, look at this album artwork here. This is like amazing. But again, it's so indicative of kind of like that Santana thing, that Latin rock stuff. And then you get a nice booklet here, which tells you the whole history of the bands and information about the albums and stuff.
Rhino do a good job. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
they
fantastic.
do. This is kind of hard to find. So if you can find it at a semi-decent price, I would say jump on it. Musically speaking, all right. So the first two albums are absolute dynamite, fire. If you love the first three Santana records, you will love these. Just the only real difference is I think that Malo utilize a little bit more R&B and salsa elements in their music than Santana did. But there's all the rock firepower. Jorge is a terrific guitar player, just like his brother. There's lots of Hammond organ, tons of percussion, there's even some kind of like, Afro rock elements as well, which Santana has as well. There's jazz on here. There's, like I said, some R&B. There's a little bit of funk. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. And then the latter two albums are a little bit more varied, but still very, very enjoyable. And all of these are remastered and really, really cool stuff if you're at all interested in diving into the whole Latin rock genre, which, again, Ken and I will be talking about in just a couple of weeks. And there's so many other bands that are well worth your attention, which you'll get to find out about. But I think if you're a Santana fan and you really have only ever listened to Santana when it comes to Latin rock, definitely go check out Malo, because I think him and his brother Jorge cut from the same cloth as far as like that rock sensibility, right? And then the first two albums are just absolutely amazing. Scorching jams, lots of funky grooves, and the Latin percussion all over the place, and the Hammond organ and horns and the whole 9 yards. Awesome stuff. So if you can get it, Malo Celebracion is excellent. If you can't find this, you can get, especially the first two albums, they're out there. You can find them on CD. You can get vinyl. If you're a vinyl person, you can find all this stuff out there in the wild. But highly recommend it. Exciting stuff if you like Latin rock fusion type of thing.
And didn't they do this together?
Yes, they did. Yep.
That's immediately what I thought of when he mentioned
his
brother.
Many years later. Yeah, they did that. That's
No,
actually a pretty fun
that's
album.
in the 90s.
Yeah.
It's a bit.
Instrument he
it's-
plays?
I haven't played in forever.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Is
just
he a
just pulled that
guitar
out
player
recently.
too?
Guitar player as well, Rick. Yeah,
He's
guitar
a
player.
guitar player also. Yeah.
It's
Yes.
quite funny that they both ended up doing a family album, just like Jimmy and Stevie Ray Vaughan did
The
just
Vaughan
before.
brothers.
It's kind of funny that
Yeah, and
not
their
not
album,
together, but then end up coming full circle at the end. That's kind of weird.
and that Santana Brothers thing is weird because it's not very commercial at all. I mean, that came out at the height of those big Santana albums in the '90s and the early 2000s. But it's
Yeah.
Sure.
Can you imagine the teenagers like, "Where's Rob Thomas?"
I know, right? Where's all the catchy songs? It's like
where's
all this really
where's Michelle
abstract-
Branch?
Well, this is about 5 years before Supernatural, the big comeback that nobody.
Oh, it
else
was
was
5 years. I
playing.
couldn't remember when it came out. Okay, so 5 years. So, but still, I mean, Santana was still doing pretty big stuff. That was after the Milagro album, and
Yeah.
some fairly decent selling albums. All right, so it was before then. All right, but yeah, it's not commercial at all. It's just basically Carlos's brother and their nephew just kind of wailing on guitars, and it's very rocky, and there's some avant-garde stuff on there, and it's pretty cool.
I got to go make a drive after this, and I'm going to bring this with me.
There you go. See that? There you go.
Do you think Supernatural is the biggest comeback where somebody's actually bigger the second time round?
It was the biggest head shaker. I
Commercially,
can't believe
he became
Santana's all over the radio.
Yeah, exactly. He was bigger the second time round because casuals knew him all of a sudden. Like my mum knew who Santana was all of a sudden.
The hip
You know?
culture knew him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I
It
mean,
must have gone more platinum than any actual Santana record, I'm sure.
Oh,
That
by
was
far,
huge.
by far.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny if you go and look at the Santana catalog, and you look at the sales. Those first three albums were all platinum plus. That first album sold quite a bit, and
Yeah.
did a lot too. Those first three albums sold a bit. I believe Caravanserai only went gold, and then they had a bunch of gold albums, or some that only sold maybe 200,000-300,000 copies. And then I think at the start of the '80s, like Shango and a couple of those albums, I think those went gold, maybe platinum, because they had a couple hit singles. They weren't all that Latin rocky, but they still were pretty good. And then like through the rest of the '80s into the early '90s, they're respectable sales, but they didn't approach gold or platinum, I don't believe, at all at that point in time. So when Supernatural came out, it was just like,
Yeah, mate.
And he also
Like
had
5
star
times
power.
platinum.
He had a star power, right? He also had Rob Thomas. He had, a lot of people were interested. Curiosity. Eric Clapton played on the album. We had a lot.
They had the hit Maria Maria. That was a
Yeah,
big
so
pop
there's a
hit.
lot of.
Yeah.
The
there's a lot of-
Everlast song was getting the alternative people to buy it. So he was
Yeah, it was like a little something
he
for
was tapping
everybody.
into a
Yeah.
lot of
I was just going to say that those two albums he did back to back, I think, appealed to everybody. And
That's
the
right.
problem is you can only go back to the same well too many times. And I think after those two, it's like people were like, "All right, this was good for what it was, but we
Yeah,
want
you've
something else."
done. You're
Yeah.
doing a Tom Jones now. It's just
Yeah.
me and my young
The
friends.
All-Star
you know?
thing ran its course. Yeah.
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 Um,
right.
I
But
tell you this, I when I hit half price books, I hit the Santana section a lot. There's still a few I'm looking for, and there were a lot I was looking for at the time.
Mhm.
And it's always okay. You see the first three a good bit. You see tons of Supernatural and Shaman. Those two, I mean, they got a ton of them, and you
Yeah.
don't see too much of the rest of them.
Yeah.
It's
But
like,
Scott,
oh,
if you
shit.
ever see, I don't know if you have them, Scott, but if you ever see, he did a couple of albums, like spiritual jazz fusion, avant-garde albums with Alice Coltrane. Those are really good.
I've heard about those. I don't have them. I have the one he did with John McLaughlin.
Lachlan. They're
Yeah.
kind of like that, but even a little more out there. But they're really cool. They're really cool. If you can check them, they're very jazzy. If you can find them, get them. They're
Find
pretty
those.
cool.
Yeah. I'm still working on it. It's a work in progress.
There you go. There you go.
All right.
So there you have it, everybody. Another episode of The Curse of the Collector in the books, our 1-year anniversary episode. So thanks for watching, everybody, and tune in next month where we'll be, talking about some stuff that we went and found and we're all excited about, but didn't really live up to the billing. So we're going to do one of those episodes.
The stuff that we already own, though, we're not intentionally now going to go out and buy things saying, I hate that, and I'm going to
Right,
buy
we're
it.
not going to go out and buy clunkers just
Yeah.
for the episode. We've
Yeah.
already gotten these and we're kind of like,
Besides, some of us have already bought the Metallica.
Didn't live up to expectations.
Yeah. So when we say the curse is real, sometimes we curse of what we got.
Exactly.
We
Yeah.
didn't, we didn't know what we expected.
That's when we say, damn that curse, it burned me this time, right? It does
Yeah.
happen. It does happen occasionally.
Yeah.
So thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the
damn time.
Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell. And please go check out Jamie's Facebook page, right? So, Jamie, you want quickly one more thing about that?
It's just called Let's Get Physical, kind of like the Olivia Newton-John song. Physical media, books, magazines, CDs, Blu-rays. We just take a picture of what we have, what we just got, we post it, we all like it, we all talk about it. It's great.
Yep, good fun. And please go over to Davey's channel as well. Davey?
Cinema Flicks Music Picks. I'm always down in the comments, so just click on my name there and we'll chat. You can give me some abuse as well. I quite like that.
He does. He relishes that.
Thrives on it.
And Rick, well, we got any new music coming for you anytime soon?
Well, I am writing, but I just want to say, anybody who watched this channel and you want to buy my album or whatever, and go ricklabonte.com. Let me know that you watched this show and you want me to sign it or personalize it. I will. I appreciate what you guys do for SOT. You know, Pete doesn't make a commission for all the albums that people have bought for other artists. I'm one of a fan of the channel, and I bought hundreds of records since I've been a fan 2017. And you know what? If you guys can help by buying one of the SOT merchandise, get on the page or put on a like button, whatever. Help Pete out, man, because this guy does a lot for us artists and people around the world, and he doesn't get a commission, just a pat on the back, and we can do a little better than that. So I just want to say thank anybody, and if you do want anything and you want it signed, let me know. I'd be glad to do that for you.
Well, thank you, Rick. I appreciate that. So
don't hit the like button though. Give him the cash. Ko-Fi link below. Give him
Even
the
better.
hard cash. Yeah, he doesn't want your likes. He wants your money, folks. Come on, cough up.
Thank you, David. For David Gallagher, Scott Berry, Rick Labonte, and Jamie Laszlo, I'm Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching The Curse of the Collector. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening, and we'll see you next month here. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.